welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce, and another shorty this week. I've got an audition where I received an audition invitation at the end of the week, and I want to focus on it. It's a very small role, but it's a Lionsgate production, so I actually almost postponed, but I didn't want to put some things off until next week. So, kicking off, with no pun intended. Yeah, did you watch the Super Bowl? Oh, my word. I don't know if it was the best ever. Maybe. Over the years, there have been some real dogs and a relative handful of really good down-to-the-wire games. And I don't know if last week's game was the best, but right now, it's the best one I can think of. Aside from being a great game, there were some incredible firsts. New England had a great defense all year, and yet Eagles punter Donnie Jones only had to punt one time. Philadelphia had a great defense all year, and yet the Patriots became the first team in any Super Bowl to not punt even once. Another first, there were over 1,100 yards of total offense for the two teams combined, 613 for the Patriots and 538 for Philly. Either number is ridiculously high, but combined, that's more than 200 yards more than what used to be the record. And despite the two excellent defenses, this was a racetrack. And there was only one sack. And actually that was a sack only, technically, in name only, because an Eagle lineman stripped the ball from Tom Brady's hand. It became a fumble that the Eagles recovered. Now, I said last week that it was going to be hard to pick a backup quarterback, Nick Foles, to outduel Tom Brady. So what does he do? No interceptions, and his yards per attempt, 8.7. That's just the number. How good is that? Hall of Famer Drew Brees had the highest number for all of last season overall, 8.1. And of course, lots of people were happy the Eagles won. A lot of that is because the Patriots is, playoff, and they've won 5 Super Bowls. Philadelphia won its first. But there were so many surprises. New England blew it on a trick play. I mean, Tom Brady handed off, and then the end came around, and meanwhile, Brady just hanging, and then he goes, and he's wide open. All he has to do is catch it. It would have been a pickup of around 20 yards. They would have been down in the red zone. Take a look.
Meanwhile, 3rd down and 5 here. And now you got it flip back here to Danny Amendola, who throws, and it's Brady who can't pull it in.
Is just going to hand off and then ignore like he's not doing anything, and there he goes. And immediately Chris Long knew he was in trouble, and Brady with the bad hand and no tape. You wonder.
Then late in the half, the Eagles had a 4th and goal at the 1.5-yard line. They were hit by only 3 points, and they tried pounding it in 3 times, and they'd been stopped. Now virtually everybody, thought they should kick the field goal. The rule is take the points. I know, they elect to go for it on 4th down.
4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws, caught. Foles, touchdown.
Here we go. They've got all these signals. Shotgun, he would not have been eligible but for the fact he was in the shotgun, not under center. And there's the old basketball player. They talk about Nick Foles. He's more comfortable playing quarterback like a point guard, and here he is receiving the pass that is going to be shown 1 billion times.
Yeah, 1 billion times indeed. Now, that play was called the Philly Special. That's the name of it, and they put it in for the playoffs. But you can only do that once. Once it's out, there's no surprise. And they hadn't shown it through the playoffs, so no one knew what it was. Now, watch again. This time as Nick Foles goes to talk to the coach. This time we hear his audio.
You want Philly food?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, now, although we saw it a moment ago, watch it again, this time without the announcers, but again with Philadelphia's sound. He tells the guys they know what to do. It's remarkable because they were very self-disciplined. And Foles goes up and looks like he's calling an audible. Watch.
You want Philly food?
Yeah, let's do it.
Philly Special. Ready? Here we go. Tonight! Easy! Kill! Lane! Let's go! Let's go! Woo!
All right, so it all comes down to the very end to win the game, trailing by 8. Tom Brady has to march down the field from his own 9-yard line, get the touchdown, and get the 2 points extra. So, game should be over, right? Except it's Tom Brady. And that's the exact kind of thing he has done so many times before. But the last play this time, Hail Mary to the end zone, incomplete. There was a very poignant image. Brady sitting middle of the field, knowing it was over. And look, I've got nothing against Tom Brady. I know it's easy to root against Darth Vader, but Tom Brady's just a guy doing the best he can. And there was another touching moment. It was after the game, after Brady had met with the press. Just off to the side was his family, and his son was crying. So Brady crouched down and says, "Hey, buddy, it's okay. We tried our best. It's going to be okay. And now I get to take you to school and pick you up every day." I think that's pretty neat. So, snow news is good news, right? Well, snow news isn't so good. A big storm, actually a couple of them, ripping across the mountains, the plains, the Midwest. We're getting it here too, but here it's only rain. But cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, lots of winter weather. Chicago may have been hit the worst. And of course, O'Hare, being as busy an airport as it is, lots of travel arrangements are getting snarled. I've from time to time told you about Bama's here in the South, bread and milk alert, because it's true. If we expect an inch or two, or if they even just talk about an inch or two of snow, the grocery stores sell out of bread and milk and lots of other staples. You don't often see that in the north. But with a forecast of maybe a foot of snow in Chicago, guess what? They had their lines too. Oh, speaking of snow news, did you see where Paris got hit? If Chicago gets 7-8 inches of snow, it's not a headline, but 8 in Paris is. Travel there is also being disrupted, but you know what makes it even more different than Chicago? In Paris, it's beautiful. Yeah, all right, a quickie before the break. I was watching an action film. The good guys were chasing after the bad guys, and they were running for their getaway van. Shots fired in both directions. A couple bad guys get hurt. They managed to get in the van and drive away. Good guys still shooting. Some bullets hit the side of the van. I'm not picking on this particular scene, but this happens so often in film, on television. Why don't the cops simply aim for the tires? It's a big target, really, and if you put down the tires, they won't get away very fast, and as soon as they shred off, they won't move at all. Shoot the tires. Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it. Okay, welcome back. Remember, you can watch all of our previous episodes at our Facebook page or at tinyworld.com/Bruce Channel, and you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com. So, maybe when I was 10, maybe I sometimes said things like, "Wow, that kid is fat." But by the time I was 14 or so, I'd learned not to make fun of someone's appearance. But I must make an exception. Look, all of us, at least sometimes, take care of our appearance. Maybe not when I'm sweating working the lawn, but if I'm going out to dinner, sure. But I don't obsess over it. I don't wear 6-inch platform shoes to conceal the fact that I'm not 6 feet tall. But there's a guy about which two things can be safely said. He does obsess about how he looks, and he does insult people about their appearance. So I'm going to make the exception and make fun of his appearance exactly as he himself would do. Maybe you saw this. But if not, have you ever seen someone's hair take a life on of its own? That's not real. Men go bald, sure. Dwight Eisenhower was bald. Conrad Janis was bald. When men lose their hair, there are only so many patterns in which to lose it, and that's not one of them. The very back of your head is not where you go bald. So do I really care what he does with his hair? No. But I think it's revelatory that he is so vain, you know? I do care that he's a bully. So I think some of his own shade back toward him is deserved. All right, I saw a film this week, and it really had an effect on me. I remember seeing the promos for it, and then it got away from me. It got out of my consciousness. A friend told me that he had recently seen it and that it was a must-see. And I didn't even remember the title. But when I Googled it and read the synopsis, I immediately recalled it's called Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures. And it really is a must-see. The film is based on the book Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. Now, I confess there were a few errors, none of them important. An example of the kind I mean, the scene was dated 1961, but there was a 1964 Ford in it. That's impossible. As I say, not a big deal. But the story it told really was a big deal. You know, that computer at your desk, it's way, way more powerful than the computers that existed in the early days of the space race. Way more powerful even than the early machines were enormous, and yours is much more powerful. Your phone is more powerful. Well, during the World Wars, computers were people, mathematically inclined people who could compute the firing tables for cannons based on distance and weather and the shell's velocity. The same term, computers, were used for mathematically inclined people who had to compute where the rockets would go. Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom, the first two, they only went up and down, short rides into the Atlantic. The problem for the orbit of John Glenn was twofold. They needed a bigger rocket that they hadn't yet used, one that could send the capsule into orbit, and the bigger math problem of now he's circling the Earth, how do you bring him down? The Russians had figured out, the Soviets had, Yuri Gagarin had orbited the Earth, but they weren't sharing the mathematical secrets. Now, back in the early 60s, black people were called Negroes, or coloreds, and they were second-class citizens. So in Hidden Figures, some of the smartest people working on the math were black women. They worked in a separate building. It's really amazing to see the appalling way of life and to have it be seen as normal. It's a bit Actually, it's more than a bit grotesque. Today, I take for granted the fact that a person, regardless of color or gender, may sit next to me at the ballpark or in a restaurant or a line at the grocery, but it wasn't always so. So Hidden Figures is about 3 of those women, and they're real women. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. They weren't whipped, dogs weren't sicked on them, fire hoses weren't aimed at them, yet day after day after day after day, they suffered indignities. The main character of the 3, Katherine Johnson, was a genius. She was doing college math when she was 10 years old. She did the work. She was told that her name couldn't be on the paper, the findings. She couldn't be the author. When she was transferred to the main room where the white people worked, she asked her supervisor where the restroom was, and the white woman replied, "I have no idea where your facilities are." Your meaning colored facilities. All the more remarkable. While that might have been true because the question previously hadn't been asked of her, so I don't know, I was almost left dumbstruck. I've been a supervisor. If I'm asked a question I don't know the answer to, I try to find out. I go to my boss, but the white supervisor didn't occur. Didn't want to be bothered. So it made me realize a couple of things. White privilege still in existence. Used to be a lot more overt. And where we are today was never guaranteed. Without the civil rights movement, when people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Medgar Evers and lots of others might still be that way. For decades, people of color were second-class citizens. It was that way in the 19th century. It was that way in the 1900s. Didn't change in the teens, nor during the 20s, nor in the 30s. It was never going to change until people demanded that things change. And some of that is in the film. And it made me feel ashamed of how we were, and it made me proud that we, as a country, could elect a black man president. And now I worry that small-minded, insecure whites want to go back to those times that they consider to be great. Again, the film is called Hidden Figures, and yes, it is a must-see. In addition to the three women, played by Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe, it includes Kevin Costner and Kirsten Dunst. And I discovered this. The genius mathematician Katherine Johnson, still alive. She's 99, yeah, I can do math. She's 99 years old, still alive, still with her husband, Jim Johnson. In addition to the Mercury program, she stayed with NASA, and some of her calculations were critical to figuring out how to get the nearly disastrous Apollo 13 mission back home. Well, I did check, and I couldn't be sure. There were a couple of addresses, but I have confidence, certainly in this instance, in the United States Post Office. After all, how many Presidential Medal of Freedom winners by the name of Katherine Johnson live in Hampton, Virginia? So I'm writing to her to thank her, to congratulate her. Katherine Johnson, the NASA mathematician, and Mr. Jim Johnson, Hampton, Virginia. I'm pretty sure it'll get there. So I hope you'll watch the film. I hope you'll write her. I hope you'll watch the film and write her. And I hope your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had. One with lots of smooches in the middle.